everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside for May 22nd. And I'll stand, roll call first, I guess. Susan?
Vice Chair Reddick.
Here.
Director Kowalczyk.
Here.
Chair Lohman.
Here.
Director Boyd.
Here.
Director Warren.
Present.
Director Harvey.
Here.
Let's have a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to have public comment, then we're going to do some reordering of the agenda. Is there any comments from the public for items that are not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none. Since we have several guests here, we're going to do some slight reordering. Or do I have to ask permission to do that?
Well, you should just say.
I propose that.
Any objections to?
Yeah. First of all, we're going to go to closed session. We're going to do the 2 interviews for positions for our interim manager. Then we'll come back to open session. Since we have a presentation tonight, we're going to move the presentation by the RMC group up in front of the consent agenda. And that will let all the guests take off over the hill if they need to. And then the rest of us will just stay here. So any objections to the reordering?
No, sounds great.
Hearing none, we will go into closed session. So thank you everyone, and we'll be out as soon as we can. Ready to roll. We're back in open session. Are we going to report action now, or is it nothing to report at this moment? Again, as we said, we're going to change the agenda a little bit, and in new business we're going to do item A, which is the presentation by RMC Water and Environment on recycled water. And you folks.
We will talk fast.
Yes, we'll
Do
try.
we need to return your
project that would be great.
Does anybody need slides? We brought some extra slide handouts.
It'll take a couple seconds. Yeah, we can turn off the lights, we can't look at these anyway.
I thought we had like a clever light solution where
That's okay.
like this half was off or something.
Or do you want the other half up?
I think that's fine.
The other half is going to be better, I think.
Give it a shot. I'll take a motion.
It's over
These
there.
aren't going off at all.
It's different light switch.
That's worse.
They're right behind you.
Right now. Okay, help.
That's
better.
There.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to come by and talk to you about recycled water this evening. It's one of our passions as a company. And by the way, I'm Mark Takamota with RMC. I brought along with me Christy Kennedy, also with RMC, both senior project managers with the firm. And we just want to give you a little background on what's going on with recycled water in the Bay Area and some of our experiences, and go through a couple projects. And Christy will start out by going through some of the current activities of the Bay Area.
Yeah, and I think our understanding was that you guys had wanted our principal, Dave Richardson, who couldn't come tonight, to come and talk. He's sort of one of the senior partners of the firm that does all these projects all over the place. So we'll talk a little bit about those and give you an opportunity to answer some questions. Here's a shot that shows kind of the different areas that we've done some recycled water projects. We've been a firm for about 17 years now. We have over 130 recycled water projects under our belt, and it really is sort of one of the main things that we do and that we love doing. We've got some pretty extensive experience in the Bay Area, up and down, a couple dots not on the map, or we've done some recycled water market surveys for some of your neighbors, San Mateo, Foster City, some sanitation districts along the peninsula, and up and down the peninsula. A lot of planning studies. We're very familiar with the process of the feasibility study that you guys are involved with, and a lot of implementation projects, designing the full CEQA layout of all the projects. We have all those opportunities in-house that can take care of those things. A couple things we wanted to just chat about were what's going on locally with recycled water, and some of the setups that are similar to yours as you kind of embark on this recycled water exciting journey. I'm sure you're very familiar with the Silicon Valley Clean Water Program. It used to be called SBSA. They changed their name about a year ago. They collect from all the sewer sheds, Atherton, Menlo Park, Redwood City, and these agencies. They collect all the sewage like you guys do there, the treatment plant there. And they were kind of bumping up against their discharge limit in the bay. And Redwood City, who is a water supplier, was bumping up against its water supply limit. So they needed to identify a source, and Silicon Valley Clean Water had a source of clean water that they needed to start using in some other fashion rather than discharge. So they have developed a very successful producer-distributor relationship. A lot of the facilities that were required for the treatment plant upgrade to get to tertiary on Silicon Valley Clean Water's site were done on site, and then Redwood City takes the water and distributes it to several users. And that program is just kind of ramping up over the years. It has quite a few users, a lot of users you'd recognize, Electronic Arts, Oracle, or some of the users in Redwood City, some other big projects. One of the ones that is a similar relationship that we're working for is the South Bay Water Recycling Program. These guys are up to about 14 MGD right now of tertiary recycled water produced. That's the city of San Jose, Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, a couple of those agencies grouped together. They have over 750 users right now, so it's a really big project, 140 miles of pipeline, and that's just expanding some of the notable areas that they serve. It's mainly irrigation, Great America Parkway, the 49ers new stadium, some of the other golf courses in the area are some of the big users you would recognize. It's recently including some cooling towers as well. They're partnering up with the new Silicon Valley Advanced Purification Center, and that's helping them get a little bit better quality recycled water. That's helping them with some of the salinity issues that they're dealing with there in South Bay. Mark's going to talk a little bit about facilities, so I'll pass it on to him to talk about the Diablo project.
And again, we weren't sure exactly what areas, topics you guys wanted to cover, so if you have any questions or you want to know more information about any of these, just feel free to stop us and ask questions. So Delta Diablo, this is one of RMC's first recycled water projects. It's a partnership between Delta Diablo, used to be Delta Diablo Sanitation District, now it's just Delta Diablo. I guess they didn't like the sanitation part in the name. Between them and Calpine, and this facility was originally designed to provide recycled water for cooling tower use at Calpine's power plant next door. And it was a fast track project done in 24 months that included all the permitting, planning, design, all of that, just to make sure they can get their water when they needed it. So there's a lot more incentive when you get a private partner that's really interested in getting the water involved. And this one, again, like you said, uses the water for cooling towers. The interesting part of the cooling towers is that they have an ammonia requirement, so what they do there is actually nitrify in the cooling towers themselves. Otherwise, Delta Diablo would have had to have done it, and that would have been a much more costly upgrade for Delta Diablo to do to produce recycled water. Another one, this is for agricultural use, for the city of Watsonville, joint project with Watsonville and the Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency. It's a 8 MGD facility, produces 4,000 acre-feet of water per year. Involves high rate flocculation, cloth disc filters, which is a little bit unusual, UV disinfection, and that supplies, like I said, water for agricultural uses in the Pajaro Valley. So it's a partnership between wastewater agency and the farmers. Now, taking a step back, I stole a graphic from one of your older reports, and this is kind of an example of how recycled water might be implemented on site here at the plant. And really, so you have your main process flow up here, primary aeration, secondary clarification, disinfection, and discharge. And the way recycled water would typically be applied is the way they've exactly shown it here in the study is you take a side stream flow, you put it through a flocculation coagulation step, you filter it to meet the turbidity requirements for Title 22, another disinfection step, and then you either store it or distribute it out to the user. So this is a pretty standard setup, so this is something we're very familiar with in terms of recycled water projects.
Why does filtration go back to primary sedimentation instead of, isn't there some way to just take it out right there instead of running it back through the system?
You can, so this is the backwash. This is the backwash for the filter, so once you remove the material, the solids, you backwash the filter to get the solids out. It does have a higher concentration of solids in this waste stream. You could send it somewhere else, but it still is pretty dilute. So the goal is basically to send to the primaries. Hopefully they've kind of accumulated into larger particles and settle out again, and you get them out in the bottom of the primary. That's the idea. because it is a little bit too dilute to handle, just go to solids handling as it is. So that's kind of what you're looking towards as you look towards implementing recycled water facility here. And it's very similar to a project we did in Novato. Here's a schematic of Novato's recycled water facility. I guess this is a partnership with Novato Sanitary District and North Marin Water District. They're producing Title 22 water for unrestricted reuse. Design flow is 1.7, and very similar. So down here you got a wastewater effluent from the plant. You pump into a mixer, you flocculate, you filter it, disinfect it. You can store it if you need to, and then you pump it out to the user. So it's an identical process to what you're looking at here at SAM.
When you do the filtration step, is that like membranes or cloth or anything? That's like a generic step, or?
It is a generic step. It has to be a technology approved by the Division of Drinking Water, so they have a list of approved technologies. So if you choose a filter, it has to be one of the main manufacturers that's approved. Same thing with membranes, same thing with cloth media. So there's probably, membranes, sand filtration, cloth, disc filters, there's cloth, balls, they're called fuzzy filters, the compressible balls that they're using for that. So there's a couple different technologies out there, and it all kind of just depends on your application, your footprint requirements, your hydraulics. Those all come into play in terms of what filtration technology you use, but it does need to be filtered.
Okay.
So another similarity to what you have here, or the project you're looking at, is that the Novato North Marin project started out as just a recycled water project to serve a golf course. So circled area is the original project producing recycled water. It was a 0.5 MGD recycled water plant at the Novato Sands reclamation facilities, and they built a pipeline and sent it to the golf course. So they were the only customer. That's all they used it for, was irrigating the golf course. And the golf course had ponds on site, and we used those ponds to store the recycled water, and drew from them as they needed to irrigate the golf course. Novato nitrifies, so they don't have the nutrient loading that you might have here. So storing ponds at the golf course might be a little more problematic from your discharge, because you're going to have nutrients, and that might cause algal growth in those ponds that they were using for storage. But other than that, it's a very similar concept. And the project we did was to implement the green area here in the North Service area. And this summer we're going to be looking at the next steps to what it would take to start serving and producing recycled water to the Central Service area in the bottom.
What's the scale here? How many miles of pipe for recycled water are you talking about?
It's not that many. It's probably like 5 to 10 miles. I mean, this is basically North Novato, the whole city. And there's a southern portion of this that's served by Las Colinas. So Novato's kind of split in half between Novato Sanitary District and Las Colinas in terms of the recycled water. But North Marin Water District manages all of it, and they're the water manager for recycled water systems and users. Another consideration at Novato that you might be looking at here is that when we put the recycled water facility in there, we took a long look at existing tanks and structures. We had basically upgraded their plant recently, and they had a lot of existing tanks and facilities that they were no longer using. So we looked at what they had left, and we actually retrofitted some of the tanks, and we took this old other filter building, chopped it up a bit, and turned it into a Title 22 filter. We saved quite a bit of money, $1.2 million in doing so. I do want to note that most of that was from the tanks, like clarifiers, using those for storage. Doing the chopping up of a structure like this is not quite as cost effective as using the tank as storage volume, but it's still something you can look at if you have those facilities on site. And with that, I think you guys are pretty aware of your next steps, but you need to coordinate with your partners, your water agency, your users, and get your agreements in place so you can start developing more concrete details for your program. And then update your facility plan. How would you implement it here on site? How would you treat the water? How much water do you need to meet peak demand? How much storage do you need? All those details need to be finalized. And then you got to figure out a funding strategy. There's a lot of funding available for recycled water right now, so it's a good time to do these types of projects. Low interest loan rates, low interest loans, grants are available for recycled water funding. And then one of the things you need to get started on very soon is CEQA, because that takes a long time to get those environmental permits and environmental documents completed. So those can be long lead time items that could take a couple of years to get done. Depending on where you're at. So with that, like I said, I don't know if we covered all your questions or covered areas you're really interested in, but.
I have one question, but I may have to actually just state it in broad terms and then have Scott narrow it down to the right question. We did a trial here with some drop-in self-contained unit, and this looks totally different in concept. So the other thing, we could have dropped in, one of them provided a certain amount, and then if the demand was there, we could have dropped in another one. And this,
Like a skid mount unit?
I don't know what it was.
We had
As
a,
a container.
we had a single container unit.
Uh-huh.
We did this pilot, I'm curious, you're showing something of ours from 2002, but we actually ran a pilot in 2008, and actually sent out for grant funding for something in 2009. And you didn't mention that at all, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance to look through all your documents in a lot of detail, but I understand the pilot you did was a microfiltration pilot with, what was that, UV disinfection?
I think it was that.
It's been
I think it was
6 years, I don't remember
Yeah.
the exact process trying to.
So typically, you would do that if you had a special need for doing so, because that produces a higher quality effluent than you normally would need for irrigation of a golf course. It can be accommodated in a smaller footprint.
But if we want to appeal to the flower farm,
Well,
that
they
may
both-
need a higher level than the golf course.
Both the golf
Potentially.
course and the nursery have very specific chemistry requirements. So
Okay. So then, yeah, if you have specific water quality objectives you're trying to meet other than just producing Title 22 recycled water, which basically there's a turbidity limit and there's a coliform disinfection limit,
what we discharge is so close to Title 22 already.
it probably is very close. If you have a special user that wants better quality water or a different kind of quality water, then you would look at microfiltration. So it'd be a very similar concept in terms of process schematic. Just the pieces would be different. The filtration would be microfiltration. The disinfection would be UV disinfection instead of chlorination. So, and those things you can buy in the skid mounted units. So it makes more sense to kind of do it that way.
My concern specifically with what we saw here, with the slides just now, is that we have one initial customer that's just about lined up, and it's unknown who else is going to sign on after they see this. And so, how do we build something that is low enough cost for the initial customer and yet can be expanded for future customers? You can't build the whole thing up front, because then it'll be too expensive for the initial customer, and you also can't build it on spec hoping that there's going to be more customers.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a balancing act in that. And then at the Novato project, we actually we built this facility, the one on the right. There are actually 3 bays for filters. There's one bay here, and we built the 3rd bay, which we didn't install any filters in as of yet. So we have space to add a 3rd one, but we didn't actually install it. And that would get us kind of the next step, but it didn't get us all the way to complete build out. So it's kind of a hybrid. You're building some extra capacity to add on the next phase pretty easily, but if we wanted to add beyond that, we'd have to build another structure out here, which we left space for, but we didn't actually go through the cost of building that structure in right now. So you kind of have to see where you are in terms of the timing of needs and how it might be accommodated in the future. You can leave the space for it, that's pretty easy to do if you have it. But how much you actually invest in infrastructure up front, that's the kind of a decision you kind of look at depending on timing.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
I will say that I saw something online saying that they're recommending people apply for grant funding now, Prop 1 funding now, even though the real application date is, I think, December 1st. They're saying get in line now, even if you don't have environmental other stuff done,
Correct.
so that you can get the process moving. Does that sound like
Yeah,
something
and
you
Prop
could
1
resolve?
funding is one of the avenues that is gonna come through is the Bay Area IRWN group. So they're going through their round 4 application process now, but getting your project listed in the Bay Area IRWN plan is sort of the first step, and it kind of opens up the funding pathway for when that starts to come out, because it's likely that it's coming through the IRWN group.
Are we too late for that, or is there time
No,
to do that?
they have a rolling application period for their plan. You'll just need to go to their website and submit. They have a template, it's very simple, it takes half an hour to fill out. You have all your project details, and so that way you can kind of at least get known to the group and your project can get recognized. You're too late for the round 4 funding that they're working on right now. But the next, I think Prop 1, we're going to start to see it in July is the time frame when they're going to release some draft guidelines, you know, for how that's going to come out. So, and then SRF, you can get on the list now. That's another thing you want to do is get listed through the state.
Revolving fund.
Yeah, through the state board, you'll want to get your project as a listed project through them. That gets you in line for the SRF fund. That's assuming you're going to meet that December, I think it's December 2015 deadline to line up for that 1%. But even if you don't meet that, you know, you're on the list.
So which
funds.
items need to be completed in the December?
So I would go for the Bay Area IRWM group, I'd go to the Bay Area IRWMP website and then go ahead and submit your project to get listed in the plan. And then you'll also want to list your project through the State Water Resources Control Board as a recycled water project. We can find the links and send those to you.
Yeah, is funding something that your group does?
Yes, yeah, very much so. I think we've, gotten
The slide.
Oh, okay, there you go. Hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. We have an internal funding group that, thinks and talks about funding and, talks all the time, and there's just rotating questions lists. We sort of have a head internal person that, just a chunk of their time is to follow and understand funding, because that's, how you're gonna get your project built, is if you get some of that funding.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And then it also relates to your CEQA. When you do CEQA, if you want to line up for the 1%, you need to do the CEQA Plus. And I don't know if you're familiar with CEQA versus CEQA Plus. So CEQA would be like an M&D or an EIR or something simple, but the Plus actually does, it lines you up for those federal funds. It's a more extensive cultural resources.
So it's not actually NEPA, but it's something.
It's part of NEPA, yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's a cultural resources report that's a separate attached report that's a little bit different than what normally goes into a mitigated neg deck or that type of report. And then also it's the environmental justice piece. It's called CEQA Plus together, and that's what you'll need to do both parts of to make sure you're lined up for the federal funds. That'll take care of your USBR funds too if you're going to apply for those as they come out.
That's very helpful. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as Mark said, there's a lot coming, but it's sort of in that they keep telling us July, so it's really the game is kind of changing with funding, and there's going to be a lot of sources opening up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those agencies that kind of have their facilities planned together, which you have, and have their environmental documentation underway or complete, that are going to be ready to go, that are going to line up well for those funding items.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, we can see
Well, we're gonna need some data.
So can we get an electronic copy of this to
Sure.
put on our website?
Yep, we can email it over.
I'm trying to avoid storing food.
Sure thing.
Okay, we will be returning to the original sequence, which is the consent agenda, item 3. And I'd be looking for, do people want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I have 2 questions on the warrants, kind of minor stuff, but I don't know, I guess we need to hold that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request, I wasn't here at the May 11th meeting. I'd like to ask that those minutes be pulled and you can deal with those at the next regular meeting.
Okay, we have the disbursements are going to be pulled. And, I'm sorry.
So it looks like we have minutes for April 27th, May 4th, then manager's monthly report, then flow distribution, and financial statements,
And we're just going to, you want to look at item C then?
and then
Big item C.
whatever the title is on PDC, that's the discharge numbers, and the SSO report, so I'll move to approve those things.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, under disbursements, what was your question?
Back to that. Just sort of curiosity questions on 2 of them. Okay, store $657 for copies? I mean, we have a giant copier. Why are we going outside to do copies?
That was specifically for the sewer science that we did, and we had money set aside specifically for the sewer science. And what we did this year is with the sewer science, we made packets that will be reusable. Next year, what we've done in the past is we've made copies and the kids either lose them or they're not there. So what we've done this year is we made packets that we will be able to reuse going forward when we do the sewer science.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is why did it make sense to go there rather than making them in-house?
Just because the volume of copies that we had last time we did it, the copier almost had a meltdown, so.
Okay. So my other question is on number 76970. I'm trying to tell you what page that's on. It's on page 44, 130. To the United Laboratories, it's a root removal / sewer line. What exactly is that?
I'm trying to find where you are.
It's the first one,
Last
76970.
76970.
United Laboratories, so what that is a, United Lab, that's, is the stuff we put in the sewer lines, right? For root control? Yeah.
Lineman or
Yeah.
Like chemical or
laboratories?
Yeah,
Oh,
so it's
okay.
like Rudex kind of a thing that you put in the sewer lines, and then it goes in and helps
Okay,
to.
I misinterpreted what the notation meant. So.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, nobody else has any questions on that, I'll move approval of the disbursements.
Get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? None. It passed unanimous. That takes care of the consent agenda. On to old business, item 4. 4A is discussing the budget.
Okay, so, at the March 23rd, 2015 SAM board meeting, this board already approved this, a budget, an operation maintenance budget, as well as a collections budget. They were already distributed to the member agencies. At the April 27 SAM board meeting, then the SAM board requested from the SAM general manager some few changes to the budget, and an addendum was forwarded to all SAM board members. And that was pretty much exactly the time when the manager left the sewer authority Midcoastside. So what we're right now trying to achieve is to get consensus from the board for the budget as it stands. On May 18th, the SAM member agency managers, along with the chair of the SAM board and the SAM accountant, met to discuss the addendum and the overall SAM fiscal year 15-16 budget. And what we agreed on is to essentially add the addendum now into the operations and maintenance budget, specifically here, the capital maintenance section. So the addendum essentially was plugged in. If you look on page 47, you'll see the requested changes on that page now listed. So the changes specifically that made it into this budget here, into this amended budget now, are $15,000 for an update to the 2008 recycled water study, $150,000 for the CEQA permitting cost, $25,000 for the comprehensive hydraulic modeling services. So 2 items specifically for recycled water, the majority of the money. So again, I think what we're looking for is consistency. I think the prior SAM manager did a good job preparing the budget, and I believe that the budget should be passed as it stands one more time to confirm for all member agencies. We'd like to send it out again. We now have added page numbers. It makes the discussion easier. We need the member agencies to turn the budgets around very fast. We need this board to approve a budget before June 30th. We want to have a budget July 1. So we need to make member agencies an opportunity to approve the budget in this form in June. The managers, city manager, and Granada Community Services District Manager agreed to present the budget in this form and ask their boards and council to adopt this budget. So the recommended action is to approve the distributed SAM 15-16 budget to the SAM member agencies for approval by the member agency resolutions.
Any discussion on that, Debbie?
Yeah, on page 94, so for the IPS reinforcement project phase 3, so we're taking, to reduce, the agency's contribution, we're taking $500,000 from emergency reserves of 1.25 million.
I'm sorry, which page are you in?
It's page, it's 94 of the entire packet. And, yeah, page 94 of 130.
Okay.
Wait, I'm not sure, I don't know what that is.
It's capitalized maintenance,
Order.
94 out of 130.
So it's gonna be
Okay.
about 2/3 of the way in.
Well,
It's page 47,
47, thank you.
the actual budget.
Okay.
Okay, well, I don't see
Can
those
you hold it up
pages.
so-
It's just on this page, it's
Could you hold it
missing.
up so I know we're looking at the same page? Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it says total from reserve, $500,000. So, that leaves us like $750,000, in reserve. And I've been looking at the SAM reserve policy, which targets, 1.25 million. So it seems to me to be an issue that we're, instead of assessing member agencies, we're actually taking $500,000 out of reserve and reducing it substantially below our target, according to the SAM reserve policy.
What,
We looked at the SAM reserve policy and made sure that the, what is taken here is not reducing the reserves to the level that the policy requires SAM to have a reserve right now. I believe the $500,000 are essentially from funds that were collected for projects in the past that haven't been implemented, and they're essentially not subject to the reserve policy right now.
But it says, the budget says it's coming out of the reserve, and what I see is a target of 1.25 million.
we have over 3 million in LAIF. Do we have in the packet a breakdown of what that 3 million in LAIF consists of?
Well, that would be on the balance sheet, and I'm not sure if I'm familiar enough with it, but you should find reserve on the balance sheet. Again, I can make sure that we looked up at the reserve level and it is adequate.
If our reserve level is supposed to be 1.2 million and we have 3 million in LAIF, sounds like there's more money in LAIF than just the reserves by far.
What's it, 3 million in, what's the word?
He's talking about the
Like the local agency investment fund?
investment fund.
Oh.
So the reserve and the LAIF are two different things, though. You have a reserve policy that targets 1.25 million, so that you can, in the event of a catastrophic event, you can run the plant for 2 months and take care of operations. So, this runs us down to $750,000 at a time where you have SRT saying the plant, the system is at the, end of its useful life. So it seems to me a little bit
Wait,
risky.
which system?
The intertie
RCA, yes.
pipeline system, yeah.
Okay.
It's in SRT's report that we had at our last.
We
regular
have
meeting.
2 months operating money in reserves, and then we have some, I don't remember how it's titled, but essentially, emergency capital project stuff, something very unexpected breaks, and we have to put out a ton of money to fix it. And I think that's what the 1.2 million is supposed to cover. And so between that and the 2 months operating, that's like 1.7 million, so I'm still not clear on what the other 1.3 million in LAIF is.
Well, it seems to make sense to me either to assess the individual agencies and leave the reserve intact, or, take it from someplace else, take it out of the LAIF and pay for it, but
So.
I think we need to maintain the target reserve.
So I have a statement here that shows that we currently have $2.376 million in the local agency formation, the local agency investment fund in LAIF.
Oh, that means the 3 point something million I was thinking of must include the checking accounts and stuff.
So I would recommend that we leave the 1.25 million reserves intact and take it out of.
Well, I think what we're trying to get to is whether or not, if you look there on that page, you see the 1.2 and then you see the 500, so are you getting the 700 some odd from that difference?
Yes.
Okay, so I think our reserves are actually stated elsewhere, and I don't think that's showing what happens to the reserve. And so some of what Clement's point, let me make sure we're clear on, some of the spending is from project monies that have been collected for those specific purposes. So of that amount, it hasn't been teased out, it's not showing what's being taken out of which account. And that's what I think we would need to get to know what the actual impact is to
Well, it seems to me
individual.
that would be proper budgeting, rather than, well, when we have a little money here and we can,
Well, I mean, fine, I have no problem getting to that kind of clarity on it. But for example, the IPS project, we've collected monies for this, I know this, so, this is not something where I'm seeing that as, I do have a question though about, and I was digging around for the reserve balances, so I've lost the page, but capitalized maintenance seems like an interesting place to be taking the exploratory monies out of for recycled water, since there's nothing to maintain there. That seems to me I don't have any problem with us advancing money from reserves for that kind of thing, but I'd like to make sure that we're accounting for that in the right place in the budget, so that,
we want to make it clear that we see recycled water as something that we're all going to share the costs from.
sure, and we could do that by having that labeled as a capital project. We've got very clear guidance in the JPA. That's one of the few areas where we have clarity.
It's been very fuzzy where, some agencies have said, well, it's a project and we don't want to pay for it, and it's maintenance when, we do want to pay for it. You've said that the IPS rehabilitation, which you're also calling a replacement, is actually a maintenance project
Absolutely.
for the purposes of having Half Moon Bay pay for it. So this is one of the issues that we want to clarify in the JPA coming forward.
I think it would
So
be
that we're
very
not,
helpful for us
gaming the system.
But I think it'd be very helpful for us on recycled water, which is a project which all three agencies are strongly supporting. Terrible reporting in Half Moon Bay Review notwithstanding. We all strongly support it. I don't think we're gonna have any trouble getting unanimous support to call this a capital project and have it be very clear where the funding is coming from all three member agencies. It's not, there's nothing to maintain, so I wanna make sure that we don't further confuse any of the definitional issues that we've got around maintenance and how that's funded, and capital projects and how that's funded, by taking a clear capital project and moving it into maintenance. I think it's one where we can say, we can all clearly get behind doing our part based on agency ownership for getting the recycled.
Well, and Debbie wasn't here for the discussions, what was it, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? That we expect that all of the money we put into recycled water is reimbursable. We will get it back from either.
It's more of a cost track.
And it actually says in here reimbursable to SAM by OCP and CCOBD. Listening to this discussion, I'm wondering if maybe we're doing the budget structure wrong. Maybe there should actually be, just like Bonterra has two budgets, one for water, one for sewer, and just like Granada has two budgets, one for sewer, one for parks and rec, maybe this agency needs to have a separate budget for recycled water.
Well, typically, we've had three budgets, which is the scenario that we like, rather than lumping them, all together.
But I'm saying split out another separate budget for recycled water. make it really easy to see
It
the
seems like
money.
if we're being reimbursed, that's a lot of effort for, all we need to do is track the costs. And if the current process will track the costs, then when, CCWD, does its thing, we will be reimbursed for that.
I'm just thinking about making it easier for
I wouldn't put in a whole
everybody.
budgeting system that we may not even have next year. So.
Where do you stand, buddy?
Maybe I can offer a shortcut to this if I share
the budget.
2 more recommendations from the managers. And those are that the budget actually be reviewed and very closely by a new manager, and that the new manager actually comes forward with a budget revision after 6-month period passes. So maybe this is something where we can focus the discussion or get this discussion back up after 6 months one more time. Another recommendation that the managers actually would like to see implemented is an immediate hiring freeze until a manager is in place. That's of course unrelated to that. But, maybe this can shorten the discussion if this topic comes back up, if the SAM board agrees that the new manager should review the budget and maybe bring forward a mid-year revision to the existing budget, then this discussion can happen at that time.
Yeah, this is gonna come up in our staff report to the city council, the issue of tapping reserves. So, you can count on it.
So can we adjust the item, the source of the funding coming from the restricted reserve account?
Well,
I think what we need to do is clarify specifically which account each of those line items comes from. And I'm hoping to see that some are coming from, I'm forgetting the word, for where we've specified what the reserves are for because we collected the money in anticipation of doing that project, and then the other from the generalized reserves.
That would be helpful for our staff, for
Yeah.
sure.
No, that makes sense, because I'm thinking, okay, I think I understand what this says, but it doesn't actually say it, so let's make it explicit.
I mean, let's, call it what it is and not say, well, reserves is actually also the leave and it's all,
Well, Life is the general holding, I mean, that's the bank account, right, and how we're tracking.
Yeah, all I'm saying is I don't think we have a clear enough breakdown of what the money in LAIF consists of. It should say, this is, this kind of reserve, this much is this kind of reserve, and whatever, and I just.
Well, we
don't-
definitely need that clarity,
Yeah.
and I don't know, can we get
So
that clarity tonight?
we can get, when is your meeting?
It's June 2nd,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay, so, well, I think, that's right, Kevin Parsons is back on the 28th? Okay, well, then we can, yes. We can get the answer to you.
So, well, I think, I understand that, and then the true balance of reserves,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
not
that
one.
should be in the statement of financials. Each of the reserve funds should be, is that,
Yeah, balance sheet, should be a balance sheet item, right?
Should be.
But we can get the answer to you before the meeting.
Where's the balance sheet?
What page would it find the balance sheet?
There's a balance sheet funds.
1 second.
Well, somewhere under 3BB.
yeah, that's what I was digging through and I lost my place for it.
22 of 130?
Yeah.
22?
2.377, cash and
Yeah.
leave.
So what that doesn't show us is each of the reserves and.
The reserves level is. I had the discussion with the accountant here about reserves levels and we just made sure that they're adequate at this
Mhm.
time.
Well,
Even
would you
taking out
use the word
profit.
adequate, sorry, I'm gonna use the word adequate.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Looking at the reserve policy, making
Yeah,
sure.
I need a number.
But I wanna see the breakdown of what
Yeah.
that 2.377 million in LAIF is.
Well, make sure you're adequate, my adequate, the same adequate.
Well, let's just, let's
Well,
lay it out there,
there's
let's spell it
policy,
out, let's make
right?
sure we're on the
No,
same
it's
page.
too general. I need a number. policy says we would do 75 million, and we are at 2 million, so we are sufficient. I don't,
And I'm pretty certain
I'm just
that,
trying to avoid conjecture.
yes, and we can get the number to you before the city council meeting, and you should be the first ones, because
We absolutely should always be the first ones, I agree.
Yeah, first in alphabetical order.
In those addenda
first ones
items,
to pass it, yes, I agree. You should always be the first ones to pass the budget.
Touche.
in the addenda items that we added, there was the small item for
Yes,
Calix, no, how
Calix,
was the
Calix
RCD
Nelson,
thing?
that was $5,000. We figured we just don't touch the general operations budget. It should be understood that the new manager has authorization to spend $5,000 without
Just for the
us
first
plugging
flush
this
program.
into the budget and messing around with the budget further,
Makes
so.
sense.
If you look on page 23 of 2030, you see equity. And account 25,500, restricted for capital projects is 1.43 million. And unrestricted is 843,733. And then the operating reserve fund, that's our 2-month money, is 250. So I think that's part of what we're looking for now. We have to get what the reserve policy actually says explicitly, measure it against that, and then identify which of those accounts, those monies in the page on page 47, whatever that name was.
Yeah. So it's certainly confusing.
Well, it's just, we just need the time together in one place.
Now, is the process that we are, quote, sending this budget out to the agencies again?
Yeah, we can send it out one more time, that way everybody has the same page numbers. We're on the same page, we know we all have the same version to deal with.
Well, I still have at least one issue, which is when Rob presented the reorganization, the staff reorganization proposal to the board. He specifically said, because I asked, that it would not result in an increase in headcount. And then here we have a budget to support that with an increase in headcount. No, I'm sorry, I can't support that.
Yeah, so there.
Well, and that is,
Which head counties?
Director Ward, you're mixing
Yeah.
two issues.
yeah, and, you know, so, we also have the issue that the MOU says that the increase in total costs, wages and benefits is limited to 3.5% for last year and 3.75% for this year, and we're at 5 times that.
Okay, that's a big issue, which is just gonna have to be resolved. It's not the budget issue. That's either an overpayment or a negotiation has to occur, because that was an incorrect action that was taken.
Yes.
The question
Can we
is.
agendize that?
What?
Can we agendize that
Yeah, let's
topic?
put that on the agenda.
Sure.
We can
The-
agendize it for, yes, following
Yeah.
meeting.
That has to be talked about as a separate item. On the budget itself, we were talking originally about adding this extra person in for the people to look at the agencies. Was that actually removed now? Was the idea we're not gonna have that in the budget? This extra person that was added as.
The budget-
operations person?
The suggestion is to leave the budget untouched, so the additional person we're talking about now, because there's confusion about adding staff, we're talking about the addition of a treatment operator is still in the budget. Is that therefore the suggestion for a hiring freeze until a new manager can assess the staffing level and bring forward a decision to the board, a revised budget that either includes the position or not. I'm not sure which positions you're referring to, but there were a number of.
It's an additional operator, which we were specifically told would not be necessary.
Okay, so
I
there
think-
was,
I think the
you're
board-
talking about the restructuring of the organization after the superintendent left. That did not, it's my understanding that did not increase the head count. additional hiring that was board authorized increased the head count.
Well,
So-
it said
so-
that nothing's been authorized.
So we're talking about the engineer that we hired last week. That was part of the reorganization, which the board approved. And we're talking about, the board discussed a new operator. And I think the staff made a point as to why that operator is needed. And the board agreed to add that to the budget at that time.
There was a position added into the last year's fiscal year, in this current fiscal year budget. So this board,
No, it's in the proposed budget, it's not in the current budget.
in last year's budget, there was a position added, and this board approved the budget with a new position in the budget. Mid-year, the board also approved an additional hire. And now we have a third staff person that's supposed to be added in the coming year, an operator. So first two were collections, now we're looking at an addition of a treatment operator.
Well, I think you have a good plan, that you're proposing from the managers also, which is, don't change the budget again at this point, but essentially
Assess it.
hold it for the manager, and let's talk about it in 6 months, and if the consensus, you don't have to spend the money because it's in the budget.
Right.
So at that point, we can look at that.
Correct, I think what's important to understand is that what this allows us to assess the member agencies. What Sam does here is this is not an authorization of spending, this is projected expenditures. So I think this board has to be very clear on refunding any monies to the member agencies that were over collected in this budget. So I think this would be your job to ensure that if there was an over collection of funds this fiscal year through this process, that these funds be returned to the member agencies.
Easier said than done, that's
It's
a
very
fight, that's a
easy.
fight I've had every year for
That was
18 years.
done,
We're not worried about the history.
That was done last year. We refunded money. We've already done that a couple months ago.
After a staff recommendation to not do so, yeah,
So
we did it.
if this was a project, this budget was a separate project that I was managing outside of the same responsibilities, I would call an all stop on this project. Because, and, because it's murky, I don't like the ambiguity and while I'm not gonna agree to anything called a hiring freeze, I'm not gonna hire anybody, I just don't wanna be under anything, I don't wanna have any limitations. But I think it makes sense that let's move forward with the budget, let's get answers to our reserve questions. But I'll tell you, my orientation going into the next budget planning cycle is this. I'm starting at zero. And it will be fighting tooth and nail for anything in our next budget to be above that which, at the end of the current fiscal year. It's become an accepted norm that it's gonna increase. Half Moon Bay is more than willing to pay what our fair share is for proper operations. It's too loose, it's too ambiguous, and it's just not acceptable. So I'm gonna push really hard for a flat budget based on current fiscal year going forward, and to move forward with the budget. If it's extra funding, we refund it, we'll do that, because we need to have a budget approved. But this whole loose murky, a little bit more is an unacceptable situation. And so I just wanna let you know where I'm at, so when it happens, and I'm mean, when we start that process, uncharacteristically mean.
Oh.
So you'll know where I'm at, where I'm coming from, but I'm starting at zero, and I'm looking for efficiencies first, before any headcount or dollars are added. But I know we need to move forward with our budget. And I have one more comment about reserves, which is, so I need the clarity of reserves. We have an operating reserve, which the policy is about 2 months operating capital, right? To operate the plant.
You will get
Then we have an
clarity.
emergency repair reserves, which is $1.25 million. I wanna know where that's at, and if we even have that available. So that's also murky, so we'll make that clarified.
we'll get that too. And to the murkiness, I may remind you that you already approved this budget once.
Yeah.
Well, no, hey, so if I could pitch in on that, because I think what we're looking at right now is we've had, Clemens, I did too, but I'm with Rick on this, that where we.
It's festered.
Where we find ourselves now is not where we thought we were when we first approved this to be circulated. We've learned a few things, and we've had departure, and I'm really grateful, Clemens, for you and for the managers and for Rick to have sat down and put your heads together to get us something that we think we can probably move forward on. I think there is some murkiness here. I would love to see just real clarity in every budget going forward, that we know exactly where if a dollar's allocated, we know what account it's coming out of, that we have those numbers rolled up so we can see what the impact is to each one of those accounts in the aggregate numbers. And I'm not gonna complain about not having it this year, because frankly, this year, I'm grateful we've still got the wheels on the bus, because losing Tony and then losing Rob, that's a lot to handle in just a few months. So I'm grateful for the people who are working hard to keep it together. Rick, I know you're doing extra work because of this to pitch in and help out attending the managers meeting. This isn't where I want to be either, and I don't want to go do zero-based budgeting. I want to be careful about saying, okay, we're just going to go dead even with last year's budget. I don't think it's a bad thing to say, I want to know exactly what the deltas are from last year's budget and what the justification for those are. Some of how we went through some of Rob's reimagining of how we organize, especially in light of Tony's departure. I appreciate that Rob was trying to figure out a way to do that, but I think we got presented some ideas kind of all at once. And rather than being participants in the process of getting to that, we find ourselves kind of being given an up or down without the opportunity to really chew on it the way that I think we'd like to. So what I'd like to do in anticipation of that in the coming year is, whoever we're working with, we make it pretty clear, look, if it's going to be different than last year, we're going to have a track record of how we got to that decision, so that this time next year, we're not sitting here asking the fundamental questions about where's that money coming from and how that fits with our policies, but rather, is everything we agreed to actually covered here? Did we leave anything out? Do we understand?
I think we need a budget change proposal process.
Yeah.
So you have a baseline budget, and then you have a list of budget change proposals,
Yeah.
so that you can look at each one, on its merits, but you identify them, you call them out.
Right, I agree that, let me have a turn.
I haven't had a turn yet. It's not jumped in
You
front of me.
haven't had a turn?
Jim, go
Jump
forward,
in front of me.
then Leonard. Jim.
Rick, Leonard, go ahead and have your turn again. Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that's missing from here that we had in past budgets, I don't remember how far past, but there was a third column that showed the percent difference in each line item, and we only have the percent difference in a few places scattered here and there. But on the detailed pages, it just gives current year and proposed budget without showing the percent delta. But I wanted to get clarification on Rick's position on hiring freeze. What I would propose is that, whether you call it a hiring freeze or not, I don't care what we call it, but I don't want anybody hired without the board's explicit approval of a specific position. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jim?
Yes, thank you. So, I agree with all of you. It's a due process. I mean, we have to, I agree that we should approve this budget, but we still have to have a process of looking at the budget going forward, and all the detail that we're talking about. So, we're connected to this budget. It's a process of making sure it's correct.
Sure, there are a couple of things we had in our discussion, one of which is we're going to, somehow the managers got cut out of the process this year.
Yes.
We're going to put that back in, so as part of the launching of the process, the managers get to see the budget also, and we get their feedback.
Are you talking about for a future year or for this cycle?
So they've already looked at it, but next time they will be brought in, not in May, but they'll come in March and April like everybody and start their input. The other thing we discussed is one of the biggest confusions we had this year was the personnel budget as one big lump. And with Rob's things that he was working on, we had fractional people overlapping and different things. We had, 1.4 people here. Next year, we're gonna be going with, here are all the positions. They're just gonna be listed so everybody can see exactly where the collections, where the treatment people are, where the admin people are. So there won't be this people, lending back and forth. So we're looking for a lot more clarity for everybody when that launches next year too, so.
I agree. So
Ready for a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve this budget for distribution or to the member agencies.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Those are quiet yeses, so.
I'm gonna say with reservation.
No, can't do that.
I wanted to make sure Greg had full opportunity to
Okay.
really entitled to be really upset, as well.
Already in a good mood to start.
Okay, item
If Rick and I
B.
are on the same page.
Item B is approval of the acting manager contract. The board approved it.
Yeah, maybe I should report on this, Mr. Chairman, very briefly. In closed session, we reviewed a proposed acting manager's contract. You've given me some revisions to incorporate into the document. Once I do that, I'll propose to transmit it to Clemens for his review and approval, and if so, you've been authorized to sign it on behalf of Sam, if it's okay with the other side.
And so you have confidence that you've picked up all the changes that we've batted around?
Absolutely.
And you're gonna distribute the revised version to the
Can we
board?
do that? We can do that. Distribute.
I have confidence that Jim has looked at all those things.
It's getting late.
Email will be good.
Yeah, distribute, okay. I can send it to Clint. You can send it.
Item C under old business is the update on the recycled water committee. I'll tell you what I know, and anybody else can chip in what they know. At an earlier board meeting, we had approved up to $15,000 to SRT to update the large study from the prior years. Their bid came in under that, so the contract was released to SRC to do the update. SRT, late. And they will be presenting the new report at the June meeting. My hope is that then we will have updated data and costs, and then we can immediately launch into a general meeting with CCWD and the golf course, because we will have the actual projected cost, not actual cost. And then the big committee, which involves all the other players, will be able to determine at that meeting if the cost of the project is satisfactory to move forward. The golf course in our other meetings has been very generous in accepting a much higher cost than they're currently paying. He gave us a ceiling amount that if it's beyond this cost, it will be unacceptable to them. So I'm hoping at the end of June, we will have the full data and we will be able to meet with the other parties at that time and say, get the go. And then at that point, as far as I'm concerned, the project's launched.
Is SRT gonna do a Gantt chart showing the timeframes for permitting and design and construction and whatever?
We had that in the last one, so if they're updating the.
They're just updating whatever the current
Yeah,
ones
but
are.
I really wanna get some feel for when we're actually gonna see the purple spigot turn on.
Sure, and, basically then, again, the status is we will get all the updated data and the updated report.
So Rick,
We will then decide how to launch the real project.
so Rick, I'm sorry, one more time, that time frame again, at the next meeting,
SRT will be presenting the report that we
Okay.
authorize them to do
okay, and at the
with
meeting,
costs and everything at the board meeting.
again, at the meeting after that, we'll bring in the other players, you said?
If we're interested, I see no reason not
Okay.
to invite CCWD to the meeting.
Okay,
And
all right.
the golf course folks.
No,
You know,
I agree.
We don't wanna have a full recycled water committee meeting, you know, then, but I'll invite them to the presentation. And then as soon as we can schedule, you know, a meeting of the real recycling to hash out what that really means to
Okay,
everybody,
good, great,
would follow immediately.
okay.
So on things like the, you know, the money to SRT that you're talking about, I hope that we're very carefully tracking all of those expenditures because, you know, one way or another, we need to recover all that money eventually.
It's a normal payment through,
Right, but I mean, there needs to be a separate inventory somewhere, you know, so that we don't have to go through check by check to find all those. There needs to be a separate listing somewhere that
That's a
lists
good point.
only
So what
the.
you're asking for is an accounting of all the costs that are associated with
Yes.
recycled water, so that we can recover those costs.
Right, yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
absolutely.
Sounds good.
So
That's part of why I wanna be real clear
Is there a
on
mechanism for
the
that?
monies that we're coming, you know.
Well, I don't know, that's why I'm raising it, I'm saying we need to be doing that.
I'd like for us to give direction to staff to account for every dime that we expend on recycled water development. We spent some money back in '09, '08.
And that counts.
All of this should be accounted for. It may take some work, but, we've done that at Montclair on some projects, just to make sure that if you're borrowing from one fund or getting grant money from another, you know, it's.
Besides the 15,000, wasn't there any other money that we approved for legal investigation?
Yeah, there were, there's like the CEQA cost was thrown out there, and none of that has occurred yet or anything
Oh,
like
okay.
that. So the direction to staff was, once we start down that path, we would then,
Well, I'm saying track the expenditures, not the money allocated.
oh, I'm not saying, it says, once we get to actually
Yeah,
spending the
okay.
money,
Okay,
now it's just a budget item.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on the recycled water? We haven't had any official committee meetings, but that was,
So do you guys have any wild ass guess? Are we talking 1 year, 2 years? What?
I have not, I would not want to speculate at this point. I don't know what the current technologies are they're recommending, or,
I would hold 1 year.
I mean, as everyone has said, you know, CEQA's gonna be the problem. It's gonna be the critical path, I know.
Well,
I think you
critical
wanna,
path, I don't see it as a problem, it's the thing.
Critical path, it's
Yeah,
just gonna take a
critical
while.
path, yeah.
but we also wanna get on these regional lists.
Yes.
All right,
I think that's gonna be really, really
I don't
important.
recall if you were here for SRP's presentation,
Yes, I was.
Okay. I won't rehash that.
Okay, under new business, we've had the presentation by RMC. Item B, under new business, update on the hiring of the new general manager. It was, the contract to Bob Murray and Associates was released, signed. So that process has now started.
Well, you know, as a member,
Unfortunately, it didn't start several months ago.
as a member of the personnel committee, I'm rather distressed that personnel committee doesn't seem to be involved in this at all. I don't know what's going on and.
It's just the contract to go hire them. All the people, like we did last time, all the resumes they collected, you know, they did some filtering, and the personnel committee did another filtering.
Right, well,
we
the-
have-
like,
all
the-
that's gonna
The brochure
occur.
needs to come back to us, and somebody needs to make sure that Bob Murray corrects the name of my district in there. Because the one that they did for the engineering position had the wrong name.
What name
I
does it
can
have?
do that for you, Leonard, no problem.
it's on the wall, it's on the wall out front here.
It is spelled
In nice brass letters.
So
Shiny
you were
brass.
here at the last meeting, where we talked about giving Rick the authority to sign the contract, move forward on the contract. And do we have any timeline when we expect to hear anything back from them?
There's a schedule that they have in the contract.
Okay.
The bad news is it extends generally, about 4 months out. And there's little stages in between that, but.
Well, the first step is they need to update the brochure that we used a year ago and bring it back to the committee.
I say,
We
search and
agreed.
replace on the name of your agency
There
and
you
ship
go.
the thing.
Well, I think we should review it just to make sure there's nothing else that
I
needs to
don't
be
wanna
changed.
add, I mean,
We
go
actually
look at
agreed
last
last
year's,
meeting not to.
go look at
Yeah.
the email from last year where we got the brochure, or go talk to one of the staff members and pull one out of the file, but I don't think we should spend a single minute on what it takes longer than to change the name of your agency.
Is it actually posted now, the job though, or no?
They will post it, I presume. I mean, I wasn't involved in the actual machinations, but Bob Murray does all of that stuff.
I probably still have a copy of that thing at home.
And one of the hopes was, there aren't that many changes. They'll just tweak their brochure and move. When I talked to him, I said, move forward. If anything's getting in your way, call me. So it's just, so.
So are we gonna do the normal process then where Bob Murray sifts the resumes and then picks like 10 of them for the committee to review down to about 3?
Review, and then the whole board will do the final.
If I may make a suggestion, you should involve the
With
member
managers.
agency managers in the selection
Yes.
of the SAM
Yes,
manager.
I like that.
And you should include them in the process. And I'm currently in contact with Bob Murray and Associates, establishing the process. So if the SAM board agrees to that, we would make sure that the managers are included in the process.
I totally support that. And anybody have any objections to that?
Absolutely not.
That's fine. Can you check the name for, El Granada while you're doing that?
For El Granada or for Granada Sanitary District?
Or
For GSD.
Moving on, since it's 10:00.
Rick, can I just ask, what is your timing on your contract with Bob Murray? When do you mentioned 3 months ago, a few minutes ago. What do you expect in the way of having these group of people for the
In the
committee?
past, I think it's taken him, from the time we say go, which apparently was only recently, because Rob didn't do it when we told him to, I think it takes him well over 2 months to get the resumes in for his company to sift through and weed out all the unqualified ones, which is usually at least 2/3 of the ones he receives, totally unqualified. And then typically the committee will be looking at it 3 to 4 months out to narrow it down to like 3 for the board to interview.
So that's a much longer schedule than the 3 months that was thrown out here just 10, 15 minutes ago.
I think you're overstating it. I think 3 months max will
Do you?
be close, yeah.
Good.
Remember, John Berg was our interim GM for 8 months.
For the folks, what I'll do is I'll send around Bob Murray's proposal, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, and then it has their timeline. I'll just send it out to you.
I'd certainly like to see the timeline.
Okay, 'cause it's like a little thing, about a 12-page document.
So when did you sign the contract? I mean, like.
I signed the
You signed the
contract today.
contract,
Today?
Yeah, I got it back today. I signed an engagement letter a week and a half ago, and the contract came back.
Hmm.
He's been advised, so they're already looking at things like that already. So. And I'll send out what I have there, so you'll see at least their proposed timeline. New business item C, consideration of changing June 22nd to June 29th.
So the background is that I am not available on the first date, on June 22nd. So the hope is that we can refer this to the SAM chair to make the decision to move the meeting. And that might be a question to Jim. If the SAM board has found a manager in the meantime, then the June 22nd meeting would work. If that's not the case, I suggest that I can run the meeting on June 29th.
Who will oversee packet prep?
SAM staff will help us with that.
And the new interim manager, if we have,
Is everybody okay with that? If the interim manager is on site, then we'll leave it where it is? Or do we want to bump it in any case?
Well,
Give them more time.
I think, you know, even if we agree on hiring an interim manager later tonight when we go back into closed session for that, he may still need some assistance from the acting manager for a week or two or something.
Let's just move the meeting.
Let's move it.
Buy
Just
ourselves
move
some time.
Is everybody open on the proposed?
Yeah, I'd like to, I make a motion to move the meeting to June 29th.
Is there a
It's
second?
gonna be later,
Just
John.
cover the one thing.
Is there a second?
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving the meeting to the 29th?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Okay, acting managers report.
The flusher truck will arrive tomorrow. The new flusher truck.
And how many staff members do we have that can drive it?
I think we're 3 or 4 weeks out until we have a staff member that can drive it.
So you better think carefully about
You're
where you
shining
have the
every day
delivery
with the
guys
fire
park it.
department. We're gonna have to get a.
We could at least
Dalmatian
christen it,
and
maybe.
It can be driven within the SAM.
It's not the size of the
facilities.
Titanic.
certain the
The plunger.
insurance
if we did that.
Oh, okay.
Liability, how long would it?
So
or
if it's driven on private property, can staff at least move it around?
What private property are you
I
talking
Yeah.
consider that a question for council.
Plant. It's not a public road.
Clemens, anything else?
That's it, thanks.
Thank you.
Directors, attorneys report.
Mr. Chairman, recognizing the time, very briefly, the real hot topic, and this might apply to each of your member agencies, and that's why I wanted to comment on it. Tiered rates are under scrutiny now, and so if you have tiered rates in your system, just be sensitive to that, and because there was a case that so arguably said you can have tiered rates so long as you can justify them, and it's the devil in the details.
Is that sewer and water both?
Either one.
Okay.
What if you have a flat charge that's not even usage based? I don't know who would do that.
I would check with
It's not.
Mr. Whitmer.
Hmm?
Check with your general
We
counsel.
did it by
In this cuts, so in case you
Go to
have,
Sacramento.
it cuts both ways. One is this emphasis now to try to encourage conservation, so you kind of like to penalize as people use them.
Sounds fine.
So that's the one way. On the other hand, a lot of public agencies have what they call a lifeline rate for people that use very little. And if that's below the actual cost of providing that, then arguably that's contrary to 218 also, because those
Right.
people aren't paying for it.
Right.
So I'm just giving you a heads up. You can talk to Tony, Dave, and I don't even know if you have the tiered rates, but my hunch is one or more of you have tiered rates.
So my problem is that we charge all of our residential customers exactly the same number regardless of usage. And people keep telling me, don't try and open that can of worms.
Thank you, Jim.
That's it. Correction. I received a telephone call on Friday, mid-morning, from your consulting engineer, SRT Consultants. They are ready to proceed with the plans. They've got their plans and specs. I don't think they've been sent here yet. They haven't been sent to me. But they're ready to go out. They'd like to get moving on the, what's it called?
Viamar line
Replacement, the pipeline replacement. It wasn't on the agenda. I tried to reach Rick, got nowhere on
But
Friday.
Why did they contact you? Why does this go through
I
you?
probably nobody, I don't know they know who to call. I don't know why they're calling me. They don't, I didn't. They just called me. And so anyhow, I didn't know what to do except try to contact the manager, or the chair wasn't. So I called Tanya back, told her what the situation was. It wasn't on the agenda. We don't have anything over here. Can't reach the manager or the chair. And so I suggested to her that if the board was interested you'd hold a special meeting in order to get that bid call going. The reason being that you're concerned about getting this construction done before the rainy season. That is a concern, But there are other issues, and that's why you may want to deal with it at a special meeting, is because you've made a big step tonight on your budget, but part of this is in next year's budget. So the problem of going out for bidding and awarding a contract, if you haven't got a budget yet prepared, was another issue that I just was not comfortable trying to deal with myself. And then lastly, I don't know what kind of staff you need, construction management for something like this. And once again, I just don't know what has been agreed to, but I just thought we needed to hold off, bring it to the board, let them either have a special meeting if they want, or deal with it in your June meeting. So
Well, the problem is we now bumped the regular meeting by a week. Not that any of us are thrilled with special meetings.
Can I just throw something out real quick? The, I did have the opportunity, and just let me know if I'm overstepping. I did have the opportunity to talk with Tim, excuse me, at SRT. And if we do go out to bid, we're just to go out to bid. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't just go out to bid. We're not actually accepting a bid, but to go out to bid so that we can have them coming in and try to stay ahead of the process so we don't lose the timeline and the window of opportunity, assuming that the budget actually, we get that to go through and we can get this project rolling. But what we're trying to do, or what their SRT is trying to do, is work within the timeline before it starts raining, because of where that section of the force main is that we actually need to rehabilitate. I mean, it really is important that we get to it before it starts raining. So that's why they wanted to get this rolling beforehand. So we don't, or you don't have to approve a bid, but they would like to at least get it out there so they can have the bids coming in.
To start it.
So we
Exactly.
need to see like bid documents to
plans,
approve?
plans and specs, I don't think have been received here. I've not seen them. So that's one issue. The budget is another. And I'm not sure you don't need, I know in the past, just like this one fellow that was here today did, I think didn't he do some construction management?
Peer review.
Peer review for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you're gonna staff this one. Like I said, I just thought, okay, it's just, if necessary, call a special meeting and do it.
So how about if I call Tanya and find out exactly what they have?
Yeah, so I
It sounds like
expect-
just
I
wants to
think-
get it moving, so let's,
I think Tim had a suggestion to the board that is that the bid be prepared, the project be bid, and that then the bid results be presented to the board. Board can either reject them outright or pick a bid.
Well, what I'm asking though is, are we supposed to review any of the documents before we authorize?
I think you
know,
should.
bid?
Yes.
Yeah,
all right,
so,
so Rick, talk to
I'll
SRP
I'll
and
see
find
how
out
fast,
where things are.
what
Okay.
they can present to
Okay.
us and how soon they can do it.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, I have
And I'll just email everybody.
I have a suspicion we may have a need to have another, I mean,
Yeah.
we've had a number of meetings, special meetings to deal with the hiring, I mean,
Would it be more appropriate for Clemens to have that interaction as a staff role?
He's paid, I'm not, that was the only decision. I'm free.
If I should make that phone call.
it seems to
I
me
can
that.
certainly have Clemens do it, if you wanna call her
Yes.
and then
Okay.
see how
And
soon.
And then you can
Yes.
mass communicate to the board
Yeah.
without violating Brown Act.
Right, exactly, and we can schedule a meeting or not.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Clement, that's great. Good.
We can schedule a special meeting as long as it's on June 29th.
But I think the point is, you know, that's.
We know, Leonard, what's going on. Okay,
5 weeks
reports.
off.
so I just went and I did a search, I think the most recent reserve policy we have is a couple of years old. And what it spells out is the operating 2 months reserve, and the emergency repair reserve of 1.25 million. That sounds like
That's
what you guys
yeah,
are looking
yeah.
at. So best I can find, that's the most recent one that we had in one of the board packets. And then it also specified that there should be funds for projects as designated. So in trying to square that with what I'm seeing here,
Got 800,000 in checking, and then what was the?
we've got,
Yeah, there's
we've
800,000
got restricted for capital projects of 1.4.
So,
And the reason I wanted to mention that was because what we're looking at for the IPS project is 1.047 from the coming year and 300 from 14-15. And I think that's roughly the 1.4 in restricted. In unrestricted, we've got 843. And then,
I'm sorry, Scott, all of this is.
no, I'm just,
It's actually
the
not.
thing I wanted to do was make
it's
sure that I
not
was looking,
clarifying.
the thing I wanted to do is make sure, one, that I found the same page that you guys were looking at for the reserve policy. And I think the only thing it spells out is operating and emergency repair, and then others as needed for approved projects. So with that, I still can't quite make this stuff line up, but we've got staff to do that, so I'm a little more sure of where we
So
are.
you're in agreement with what we did 30 minutes ago?
No, I'm in agreement with you about where we are on the reserve
Actually-
I would like to point out, though, there is a provision that's really important. SAM will assess member agencies as necessary to maintain the minimum balance in each reserve.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to extend slightly the request to staff, which is not only to have a breakdown of what's in LAIF, but, I see 800,000 in checking. It's like, okay, so can you include all of the cash, which is LAIF plus checking, in that accounting?
Yeah, that's a full explanation of, that's the balance sheet essentially.
Right.
Okay, directors' reports.
I gave mine.
Just I have a quick one. I went to the LAFCO meeting last week. The big items that people will be concerned about is that the service review for the Harbor District will be released this week. The one for the northern counties should follow like almost immediately. That will be available to the public. The goal is to help the Harbor District in their current discussions. LAFCO will hear officially these meetings, these reports at the July meeting.
Are they going to be on the LAFCO website? Like
I do
when it
not know
comes
where
out?
they're going to be. I would assume so.
The Harbor District one's theoretically coming out tomorrow.
Yes, these are all imminent. LAFCO will be taking its official position in July on both of those.
So when are you going to ask them to televise the LAFCO meeting?
I've asked them.
Oh, and the response was?
What you'd expect. The other directors' reports? Seeing none. We'll be moving into closed session, but since there won't be any more filming, when we did the interviewing process, we had a very unfortunate situation with one of our applicants. She has since passed. This is Janet McClintock, and we would like to adjourn officially tonight's meeting in her memory. Our hearts go out to her and the family and her friends, but we'll be adjourning tonight's meeting in her honor, in her memory.
Thank you.